Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Hart is getting sued by the SEC. In today's video, we're going to look at this press release, and then I'm going to share with you what I think Richard Hart's going to do. Do I think he's going to fight this, and what do I think the outcome could be? I'm going to discuss that in this video. Also, what does this mean for Pulse? What does it mean for Pulse X? Is it over for Hex and Pulse X? I'm going to tell you my thoughts in this video as well. Also, what about the community? You know, the community has been one of the most valuable things with the Pulse and the Hexicans. It's been the Pulsicans and the Hexicans, right? It's been that community has really been what's, to me, I've always seen the most viable aspect of all these projects is there's such a loyal, strong community. Well, I'm going to make a prediction in today's video that I believe is going to be 100% accurate, and it's going to shock some of you that are Hexicans and some of you that are Pulsicans. I mean, it's going to shock you. But I'm going to make a 100% prediction that I think is going to come true. Like I'm 100% certain it's going to come true, and it's going to be shocking. All right, let's go ahead and go through this, and then we'll get to that in a moment. The Securities and Exchange Commission today charged that Richard Hart and 3 unincorporated entities that he controls, Hex, Pulse Chain, and PulseX, with conducting unregistered offerings of crypto asset securities that raised more than $1 billion in crypto assets from investors. The SEC also charged Hart and Pulse Chain with fraud for misappropriating at least $12 million of offering proceeds to purchase luxury goods including sports cars, watches, and a 555-carat black diamond known as the Enigma, reportedly the largest black diamond in the world. According to the SEC's complaint, Hart began marketing Hex in 2018, claiming it was the first high-yield blockchain certificate of deposit, and began promoting Hex tokens as an investment designed to make people rich. From at least December 2019 through November 2020, Hart and Hex allegedly offered and sold Hex tokens in an unregistered offering, collecting more than 2.3 million Ethereum, including through so-called recycling transactions that enabled Hart to gain control of more Hex tokens. The complaint also alleges that between at least July 2021 and March of 2022, Hart orchestrated 2 additional unregistered security asset security offerings that each raised hundreds of millions of dollars more in crypto assets. As alleged, those funds were intended to support development of a supposed crypto asset network, Pulse Chain, and a claimed crypto asset trading platform, PulseX, through the offerings of their native tokens. Respectively, Pulse and PulseX, Hart also allegedly designed and marketed a so-called staking feature for Hex tokens, which he claimed would deliver returns as high as 38%. The complaint further alleges that Hart attempted to evade security laws by calling on investors to sacrifice instead of invest their crypto assets in exchange for Pulse and PulseX tokens. Hart called on investors to buy crypto asset securities and offerings that he failed to register. He then defrauded those investors by spending some of their crypto assets on exorbitant luxury goods, said Eric Werner, director of Fort Worth Regional Office. This action seeks to protect the investing public and hold Hart accountable for his actions. Wait a minute. See, here we go. They want to take care of you. They want to protect you because you're not grown and you can't protect yourself. You're not capable of making your own financial decisions. So daddy government has to come in and protect you and take care of you. Yet Pulse Chain, and Hex are down 40% today, 45% today, 46%. That's not protecting. That's destroying 40-something% of people's wealth instantly. That's not protection. That's the opposite of protection. All right, that's nonsense. I've got more to say on that, but let's keep going. The SEC's complaint filed in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York alleges that Hart, Hex, Pulse Chain, and PulseX violated the registration process provisions of Section 5 of the Securities Act of 1933. The complaint also alleges that Hart and Pulse Chain violated the anti-fraud provisions of the federal securities laws. The complaint seeks injunctive relief, disgorgement of ill-gotten gains, plus prejudgment interest, penalties, and other equitable relief. The SEC continues this investigation is being conducted by yada yada yada. All right, the litigation will be conducted by Matthew Guide. Okay, great. So let's kind of go through this for a moment. First and foremost, the idea, here's where the government is coming after Richard, and they've got a bit of a case. And unlike a lot of crypto assets where you can say, hey, you know, this is like XRP, for example. This is not a financial instrument. The purpose of XRP is not exclusively to make people rich. That's not the goal. That's not the idea. Now, that idea alone does not make something a security. Let's keep that clear. There's supposed to be a very clear framework, the Howey test, that makes something a security. That's that was what's considered a security, and that's kind of why XRP won recently. Now, Richard Hart has been very clear, and this goes into kind of his reaction to all this. First of all, he's being dead silent right now. He's not saying anything on Twitter at all. He's not responded at all. And I think that's interesting because he hasn't come out and said this isn't true and we're going to fight this. He hasn't said that at all, and I think that gives us a clue in what he's maybe planning to do. But let's back up for a moment. So Richard Hart knew from the beginning that he could be looked at as Hex being a security from the beginning, and I think he understood that because he said, they make it seem like he promised returns, or he promoted 38% returns. Well, that was a reverse looking statement. That was based on the previous performance. And so he was saying, obviously, he can do that. He can do up to that in the future. That's likely as well. He obviously said that. He obviously oftentimes touted the price increase. He talked about the chart moving up and to the right, which it did for a good bit of time. So he always said these things. He always talked about how much the price was going up. He always talked about how much money people were making investing in it. He used to say that it was programmed to go up and to the right, but he also said that's not guaranteed. He said that many times. Listen, this is what it could do. This is what it should do. This is what we hope it can do. We've tried to program Hex, for example, to move up and to the right. We tried to program it to incentivize certain human behavior, like locking up your tokens for an extended period of time, like keeping the circulating supply relatively low, like giving you a small return, like giving penalties for people who instaked early. All of these things help create a return for people who are going to hold long term. And to Richard's credit, I mean, he's done a lot of, you can hate the guy all you want, but a lot of what he has to say when it comes to not Hex itself, but the overall markets and how centralized markets work and how they take advantage of decentralized. Listen, I use centralized markets. I promote centralized markets, but he's 100% right. I'm waiting for the day that DeFi wins. I sell options right now on a decentralized platform. Do I think the decentralized platform is actually better than a centralized platform? Not yet. I don't. It works. It's effective. It is decentralized, but it's not as good as using one of the centralized exchanges yet. It's getting there, but why do I trade on it? Because I support the whole DeFi aspect of it. That's why. That's why I trade on it. So I don't want to get too far off track, but Richard Hart has done a lot of good things talking about decentralized finance. And one of the things that he's done when he created Hex, what he's talked about, the goal is for this to be decentralized. And the government's going to say yes, but it's a security because he promoted it like a security. But promoting it like a security doesn't necessarily call it a security. The challenge is it's going to be very interesting to see what a judge says. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes up in court. It's going to be very interesting how much of his personality can they interject into the court proceedings, because Richard Hart, unless you already liked Hex and you liked his projects, you probably did not like the Richard Hart who used to live stream, who was always a little bit braggadocious, who seemed like an egomaniac, who seemed to be very narcissistic. Like, you probably aren't going to see him as naturally a likable guy. It's why Richard Hart has been so divisive, I think, for a lot of people, or polarizing is a better word. He's been very polarizing. People either loved him or hated him. They couldn't look through what he was portraying on camera and look at what he was creating, and there was some good to what he was creating. I personally did not fully love Hex. I kind of was on again, off again. I think the most I ever put into it was about $1,500 or $2,000, and I just watched it. And I understood what it was designed to do, but I wasn't certain that it was going to work. At least from the big payday on, I think we need to give it another 5 years to see if it was going to work. I didn't want to lock up my money for 5 years, my funds for 5 years. But it was fascinating to see what he created. It was fascinating to watch the community. It was fascinating to see it attempt to catch on. And then he's going to go and take this community, a very strong, one of the most fervent, like passionate communities I've ever seen. And I think this is what's going to shock everybody. I'll get to the passionate community here in a moment. I actually think if Hex and Pulse Chain fails, it will be 100% because of what's going to happen in the community. I think there's a civil war coming inside of the Hex community and the Pulse community. I don't want to see it, but I think it's coming. I'm going to explain why here in a moment. But back up a little bit. The Hex community, they were so passionate, they were so enthusiastic, and now he's going to go and create basically a Binance Smart Chain, but better, more decentralized. He's going to fork Ethereum. He's going to fork all the assets on Ethereum, which no one's done before. Which the goal of doing that was hopefully to create adoption, to create awareness, to get people outside of just the Hex community to want to find out about it, get the greater crypto community to want to find out about it. And he goes creates Pulse and Pulse Chain. And how did he do it? He did it through a sacrifice phase. What's the sacrifice phase? Well, he didn't do an initial coin offering. He didn't raise funds for it. He said, "Hey, we're going to sacrifice. You're going to sacrifice it." You've listen, and the thing about the sacrifice phase is it made sense. Like if you just do an airdrop to everybody, even across the board, we've already seen that hasn't worked real well yet. And the federal government says you can't do an ICO, which I see nothing wrong with initial coin offering. I mean, in the States, it's illegal. Why is it illegal? You know why it's illegal? Because JP Morgan can't get their cut on it by taking it public. The SEC can't look important by approving it to go public. So since big finance can't get their cut on it, since the large brokerage houses don't get to sell it to the public, and it can simply be done on a website by sending a few funds from your wallet, a little bit of Ethereum to an address, and then you can get airdropped based on what you send to that address. It cuts out traditional finance altogether, and it allows average people to invest in assets. Listen, the amount of money that was made in the ICO phase is insane. It's insane. I'm willing to bet, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm willing to bet that there was far more money made because the multiples were so high on projects that succeeded overall than projects that lost money during ICO phases. I could be wrong on that, but some of the projects I were following that still exist today, my goodness, if you could have got into the ICO phase, it was insane. It was absolutely insane. But Richard Hart can't do an ICO, so he does a sacrifice. And he says, hey, listen, I know they can't make an investment expecting to get a return. So if you're Richard Hart, how in the world can you get people to make an investment, and how can you definitively prove that they say that they don't expect to get a return? Well, have them go to a website. On the website, there are instructions. You can make right now. You can make a deposit, and you can sacrifice your crypto. But you agree that you're making a political statement. And if I remember properly, there's a little pop-up or a thing we had to click on. But basically, it was on the website. You're making a political statement. You expect nothing in return. We had no date of launch. We had no time of launch. We had no one telling us what the price was going to be at launch. We had no guarantee that prices was going to go up. Nothing. Now, a lot of us hoped that price would go up. A lot of us hoped we'd see a 10x, a 100x, a 1000x, a 10,000x. Sure, we hope that, just like you hope that with anything that goes in. We hope we were going to get something in return, but you know what? We waited for 2 years, and we got nothing. We got nothing. Why? Because we sacrificed. Now, some people were still upset. I wrote it off. I didn't think I was getting it back. A buddy of mine said, "Are you paying attention to what's going on in Hex?" I said, "No, man. I'm not invested in Hex. I sacrificed for Pulse and Pulse X. I haven't seen nothing. Let it go. It's gone. For whatever reason." And I actually thought then, I wondered then if Richard Hart was under investigation, and maybe he was. Maybe he knew that they were paying attention to him. I'm not sure. But then lo and behold, Pulse comes out. Pulse Chain comes out. Wasn't a perfect launch, but it launched. We had a product. It works. And it's been getting better. The ecosystem has been getting it better every single day until we get this nonsense lawsuit. It's not totally nonsense. I get Richard Hart has sort of, because of what he's decided to develop and the way that he's decided to promote it and talk about it and its intended purpose. I mean, listen, Hex was designed to go up and to the right. He never guaranteed that it would. It was essentially a cryptocurrency experiment to try to create a project that would go up to the right. And that's how it was obviously designed. Pulse was designed to be a fully decentralized blockchain project. It is fully decentralized right now. It's got validators running everywhere, and none of them, as far as we know of, none of those validators are being ran by Richard Hart. He has said that there were no founding validators left. He has said that himself. So we got this decentralized Pulse chain, which is like a better version of Ethereum in some ways, but really and truly it's a better version of Binance Smart Chain. That's really what it is. It's a cheaper, better version of Binance Smart Chain, in my personal opinion, because they basically just forked Ethereum. So now the SEC is going to come after him. What's he going to do? I think his goal was to originally settle. I think he had two approaches. And again, I'm not a legal expert. I'm just commentating on observing this. I think his first goal was to avoid a lawsuit. And I think the way he was going to try to do that was explain. He put his defense out there very publicly. Why this didn't fit the Howey test. Why this wasn't a security. He talked about it publicly all the time. This isn't a security because. This isn't a security because. He even said on live streams, I can't guarantee something's going to go up. I can't make it go up. He said that all the time, all the time. So I think that his first goal was try to avoid the lawsuit and try to by laying out his defenses in the event that a lawsuit came his way. I think his second goal was he knew he was sitting on a mountain of funds, and I think he was hoping to settle. But I don't think he's going to be able to settle. I don't think they're going to give him a chance to settle because they're going after him now. And the biggest challenge right here is the misappropriating millions of dollars of investor funds. This is criminal. If they go through, if they're able to win this case basically against him, this is a criminal. The whole unregistered crypto asset thing, that's uncertain. They'll give you a fine on that, and you can move along. Maybe they say you got to burn everything you have in possession, which would be fine for him. He could easily burn everything he has in possession. He doesn't have much probably, but he could burn it if and be done with it. And then it would be up to community to run the project. Listen, I don't think that's bad. I'm about to make a prediction here in a moment, but I do think there's a possibility. I'll give you the prediction here in a minute because I think there's a civil war coming inside the community. But long term, there's still a 20 or 30% chance that Pulse and PulseX anyway makes it because they are decentralized. There's decentralized validators running it. There are decentralized developers. There are independent developers working on projects now. I think we're going to have to see the fallout of all this to kind of get a better idea of if it succeeds. But I think there's about a 20% chance. If there was not going to be a civil war inside the Hex community, I would say there's about a 50-50 chance. But I'm telling you, there's a civil war coming to the Hex community and the Pulse community. And I think it's over this misappropriating of funds, this $12 million. Now, I think most people, by the way, I don't think there should be a civil war. I think the one side of the civil war I disagree with. I think they're idiots. But let me just talk about what's going on here. The government's going to say $12 million of proceeds were used to purchase luxury cars and sports cars and watches and the largest black diamond in the world. And he looks like a horrible person. And what they're saying is he sold unregistered securities and committed fraud. Essentially, misappropriating funds is fraud. He committed fraud. Typically some sort of lying, some sort of deceit. But I think most people, by and large, most people in the Hess community understood this $12 million probably came from the $1 billion that was sacrificed. Most of us believed, and I mean most of us, 95% of people understood he probably had control. He probably was the Godwell or someone that knew him very, very, very well. So he probably was the Godwell. He probably had control of these funds that was sacrificed, and he probably was using some of those funds to live off of. So when we saw all this flashy stuff in the background, Louis Vuitton gaudy nonsense, and he tried to say he needed to have it for marketing, and I think to some degree it was effective, but I think it was ridiculous. At the same time, it's easy to paint somebody as a bad person, rich guy bad. Successful guy bad, even though everybody's trying to get rich. Everybody is wanting to be rich and successful. Everybody who's invested in cryptocurrency thought that at some point the price was going to go up. All of us would like to be rich, but unfortunately we want to demonize the guys who become rich. The thing is, Richard Hart did not lie to people to get $12 million, in my personal opinion. You can let me know in the comments if you disagree. He didn't lie to them. Like they understood what they were investing in. They understood he had access to those funds, most people. They understood he was probably using some of those funds to support his lifestyle, including the one that we saw on camera. It wasn't like he was hiding it. So I think this is interesting, but I think this is where there's going to be a civil war because people are greedy. They want to get something, and they want someone else to be responsible. The Hex price is down right now, and the government made certain that it went down even further today when they filed this lawsuit. Hex is down, way off its all-time high. Pulse is down. PulseX is down significantly since the sacrifice phase. People are upset. And so they're going to look for someone to blame. Even though they understood when they made an investment, there was a possibility it could go down. The people who are going to blame Richard Hart because the price is down and they wanted him to do something means that they don't understand securities laws. They were wanting him to create a security because they were wanting, if you expect to profit from the work of others, that's a security. You didn't understand it to begin with. But if you're going to complain because your investments are down, you have no reason investing, in my personal opinion. And if if you've previously called yourself a Hexagon, now you're going to attack Richard Hart because he's getting sued. You're going to bandwagon onto this lawsuit. And this is a prediction. This is what's going to happen. If you come down here, right here, if you're an investor in Hex, Pulse Chain, PulseX, Or if you have information related to these investigations and you wish to contact the SEC staff, please submit a tip right here. There are people right now, I'm going to call it, there's going to be a lawsuit, most likely, a class action lawsuit from people in the HEX community, HEX investors, who want to sue Richard Hart. And basically, their class action lawsuit will more likely succeed if the SEC wins. They're going to sue Richard Hart. They're going to want him they're basically going to want their money back. They want money out of him. Now, if they were in the positive, they wouldn't be doing this. If they're in the positive, they'd be like, oh, go away, government. You're messing with my gains. But now they're like, oh, this might be a backdoor way for me to get my money back. I made an investment. The investment went south. So who can I blame? I want the government to protect me and tell me when I can and can't invest my money. Like, it's ridiculous. Honestly, it's ridiculous. But I'm not going to doubt that there are going to be some HEX investors for sure going to the class action lawsuit. But I'm talking about the actual Hexakin community. Here's my prediction. You will see some mainstream HEX influencers, mainstream Pulse influencers, and maybe one or more of the people that you actually see in that Richard Hart documentary. I can't think of the name of it right now. You're going to see some of those people end up joining a class action lawsuit. They've called themselves Hexicans. They said they were loyal. They said they loved it. They were promoting it. They said they believed in it. They said they didn't expect to get anything, in return. They understood they were sacrificing. They understood what a sacrifice phase meant. They said all those things in the past. And even though they said all those things in the past, some of them are going to join this class action lawsuit. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've promoted Hex and you've talked about Hex and you've talked about Pulse Chain, you've talked about PulseX, and you're now going to bash it because the SEC has brought a lawsuit against Richard Hart. Listen, I'm no Richard Hart savior, but in my opinion, he presented it very clear. It's, it can go down. We hope it goes up. Like, all that was obviously talked about. And yes, his personality was not one that people could fall in love with for the most part. And it's cringy to hear people talk about him being almost a god. And people do say that. And I have read those. And it's in that documentary. There's one girl who says it. And it's kind of oddly disgusting in a way. That's true. But if you made an investment, he didn't trick anybody, in my personal opinion. And if you want to look at the recycling of funds, which he never admitted to, which was obvious that it was happening, at the end of the day, that recycling of funds helped promote the price of Hex, and is probably why Hex succeeded in the early days. Because there are other projects that basically copied Hex that did not succeed. The Wise token came out because that guy was a big investor in Hex. And when he saw there was recycling of funds, it bothered him. He thought it was unnecessary. He thought the project would stand on its own merit without the recycling of funds. So he launched a Wise token. That token has not worked. It hasn't done hardly anything. Why? Because he didn't do the whole recycling. When Richard Hart recycled funds, what he did, because people didn't know what was happening, but I say this and not being a big Hex investor, but what it ultimately did was it gave kind of the upward price momentum that the community needed for people to have faith in the movement of what it could do, what was possible. And then it went on a crazy run from there before eventually pulling back again. So, did Richard Hart deceive the public? Is Hex unregistered security? I don't know. I tend to say no. I'm 60-40. But I do think that there's a good shot that Hex could win, the SEC actually could win this lawsuit. Because I don't think he's going to be able to settle for just a fine. And the reason he's not going to be able to settle for just a fine is because there's a $12 million freaking misappropriation of funds here. That's a big deal. That's financial fraud. That is a problem. That is a problem. And I don't care if you're pro crypto and pro Bitcoin and pro Ethereum and you hate Richard Hart. You should not want the SEC to be able to win this. You should not. You should know that free thinking, consenting adults who make decisions based on their own free will with their own funds made a decision to go into a project. We all made a decision to go into a project. I will not be joining a class action lawsuit against Richard Hart. I would never have taken the risk he's taken, by the way, to create a project. I knew from the beginning he was taking a significant amount of risk creating this project. I would have never taken on this risk. I admire that he's tried to take it on. And I admire that. I think the intention of the actual projects was probably pretty good. I don't think he was out to hurt anybody personally. I don't know. You let me know your thoughts are down in the comments. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you liked to hear some an attempt at objective, unbiased reviews on these news stories, yet I'm obviously pro crypto. I will admit that I am biased towards crypto. I am biased towards the little guy being able to have equal access to the financial markets. I am biased against traditional finance and big banks who want to block average people like you and I from being able to get access to lucrative financial markets. But I try to commentate on some of these news stories in an unbiased way. And if you can appreciate that, do me a favor, smash that like button, click that bell notification icon, click all. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Decentralized cryptocurrency equals freedom. This is Crypto Wealth. I'm out.